"This is your one warning. Stop now or we will burn your homeworlds to ashes," Captain Robert Porter broadcasted to the Qatarian fleet, amassing near Zephyrus Prime. He knew the odds of avoiding galactic war were slim. Minutes earlier, Porter had arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters after receiving an urgent summons. Insectoid Qatarians and avian Solarians argued intensely as he entered the Grand Chamber. The Council revealed dire news. Qatarian warlord Ilara had built a massive invasion fleet. Worse, she possessed a planet-killing weapon and had already annihilated several peaceful worlds. "Captain Porter, you're the only one who can stop this madness," the Solarian ambassador said. "Ilara's stronghold is on the Qatarian homeworld. You must infiltrate it, destroy her superweapon, and eliminate Ilara. The fate of billions hangs in the balance." Porter squared his shoulders. Infiltrating the heart of Qatarian territory, on a likely suicide mission, was not how he'd planned to spend his shore leave. But when the freedom of the galaxy was at stake, humans answered the call. "I'll need my best troops, and every advanced weapon you can spare. This won't be easy." The Qatarian ambassador nodded. "We know, but you humans excel at achieving the impossible. Please, you're our last hope. If you fail, we'll have no choice but to surrender to Ilara's rule. Our civilizations will be enslaved or exterminated." With a heavy heart, Porter agreed to lead the desperate mission. He knew many humans would die to stop the Qatarian threat, but they would gladly sacrifice themselves to save the innocent. He just prayed it would be enough. With the fate of the galaxy on his shoulders, Porter got to work assembling his elite strike team. His first pick was Sergeant Jack Boomer Hawkins, his closest friend and the best demolitions expert in the fleet. Many times, Boomer's quick thinking and improvised explosives had saved their lives on the battlefield. Porter knew he could trust the man with anything. Next, he recruited Lieutenant Mina Sato, a prodigy hacker who could slice through any security system. Her cyber warfare skills would be essential for breaching Ilara's defenses and gathering critical intel on the Taraxium cannon's weaknesses. The three boarded the Silent Shadow, the most advanced stealth ship in the human arsenal. As they charted a course to Qataris Prime, Porter couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. This was the heart of the enemy's territory, and Ilara would have her entire military might guarding the superweapon. "Captain, I've been reviewing the intelligence reports from the Council's spies," Mina said, her brow furrowed as she scanned the data on her holoscreen. "It looks like the cannon is powered by a rare element called Taraxium, extremely volatile and destructive." Boomer let out a low whistle. "Sounds like my kind of party. How do we take this thing out?" "The cannon is hidden in a fortified bunker on the planet's surface," Porter replied grimly. "We'll have to find a way inside, plant charges on the Taraxium core and get out before—" Suddenly the Silent Shadow shuddered as an explosion rocked the hull. Red warning lights flashed across the cockpit's displays. They were under attack by a Qatarian patrol fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," Porter shouted, taking the helm. His hands flew over the controls as he sent the ship into a dizzying spiral, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma torpedoes. Boomer sprinted to the weapons station, his fingers already priming the ship's advanced missile launchers. "I've got a lock on the nearest fighter, firing." A streak of white light erupted from the Silent Shadow's hull, instantly vaporizing the Qatarian ship. But there were dozens more swarming around them, peppering their shields with laser fire. "Shields at 60%, Mina warned, frantically typing commands into her console. "I'm trying to jam their targeting systems, but there's too many of them." Porter gritted his teeth, pushing the ship's engines to their limit. He knew they couldn't win a straight fight against the Qatarian fleet. Their only chance was to slip past their defenses. With a series of elaborate feints and rolls, he managed to evade the worst of the enemy fire. Boomer unleashed a volley of missiles, taking out several more fighters and forcing the rest to scatter. Seizing the opening, Porter gunned the thrusters and sent the Silent Shadow hurtling towards the planet's atmosphere. Mina's hands danced across her console as she activated the ship's cloaking device. Moments later they were through, racing towards the surface under the cover of the ship's advanced stealth technology. The Qatarian fleet continued to search for them in orbit, but their scanners showed nothing. Porter allowed himself a small sigh of relief as he brought the ship down for a landing in a remote canyon, far from any populated areas. But the hardest part of their mission still lay ahead. He turned to face his team, seeing the determination etched on their faces. They all knew the odds of survival were slim, but they would gladly lay down their lives to stop Ilara's reign of terror. As the silent shadows settled onto the rocky surface, Porter, Boomer, and Mina checked their weapons one last time. The Qatarian stronghold loomed before them, a foreboding fortress carved into the side of a towering volcano. Its obsidian walls seemed to absorb the dim light, and the heavy blast doors at the entrance were guarded by a dozen elite Qatarian soldiers. Porter nodded, his mind already racing through potential strategies. "We'll have to split up. Mina, can you hack into their security systems? Create some kind of diversion?" The young lieutenant grinned, her fingers already flying across her wrist-mounted computer. "Give me 2 minutes." As Mina worked her digital magic, Porter turned to Boomer. "We need a breach in that wall. Think you can handle it?" Boomer patted the satchel at his side, filled with high-yield explosives. "Just point me in the right direction." Porter scanned the perimeter, his enhanced vision zeroing in on a section of the wall that looked slightly less reinforced. "There," he said, pointing. "Set the charges along that seam. Wait for my signal to detonate." With a nod, Boomer slipped away, his dark armor blending into the shadows. Porter turned back to Mina, who was still typing furiously. "Almost got it," she muttered. "And there, alarms triggered in the eastern sector. That should draw some of the guards away." As if on cue, a blaring klaxon echoed from within the fortress. Porter watched as half of the soldiers at the entrance rushed off to investigate. "Good work," he said, unclipping a small grappling device from his belt. "Now comes the fun part." With a running start, Porter aimed the grapple at the top of the wall and fired. The hook sailed through the air and latched onto the battlements with a satisfying clang. Porter hit the retract button and felt himself yanked upwards, his feet leaving the ground as he rapidly ascended. He reached the top of the wall in seconds, landing in a crouch behind the remaining guards. Before they could react, Porter was on them, his pulse rifle flashing in the darkness. 2 guards crumpled to the ground, their armor smoking from the high-energy rounds. The others spun to face him, but Porter was already moving. He ducked under a wild swing from one guard and drove his fist into the Qatarian's midsection, feeling the alien's exoskeleton crack under the force of the blow. Another guard raised his weapon, but Porter was faster, snapping off a shot that caught the Qatarian square in the head. In moments it was over. Porter stood amid a pile of unconscious or dead guards, his breath coming hard and fast. He keyed his comm. "Boomer, now!" A heartbeat later, a massive explosion rocked the base of the wall. Dust and debris billowed outward as a section of the fortifications crumbled, leaving a gaping hole. Boomer and Mina emerged from the smoke, their weapons at the ready. "Nice work," Porter said as they joined him atop the wall. "Let's move." Together they dropped down into the compound, landing in a crouch on the other side. The interior of the fortress was a maze of dimly lit corridors and cavernous chambers, all hewn from the same black volcanic rock. They moved quickly and quietly, their weapons sweeping the shadows for any sign of the enemy. But the Qatarians were on high alert now, and it wasn't long before they ran into resistance. A squad of soldiers emerged from a side passage, their chitinous armor gleaming in the low light. Porter and his team reacted instantly, diving for cover as a hail of plasma bolts filled the air. Boomer popped up from behind a crate and unleashed a barrage of fire from his pulse rifle, sending 2 of the Qatarians sprawling. Mina, meanwhile, had hacked into the base's defense systems and remotely activated a set of blast doors, sealing off the corridor and cutting the squad in half. Porter charged forward, vaulting over a low wall and unleashing a flurry of close-quarters strikes on the nearest soldier. The Qatarian was fast and strong, but Porter was faster and stronger. He dodged a vicious swipe from the alien's claws and retaliated with a crushing blow to the head, feeling the Katarian's skull give way beneath his armored fist. More soldiers poured into the corridor, and soon the air was filled with the shriek of energy weapons and the sizzle of superheated plasma. Porter and his team fought like demons, their movements a blur as they cut through the Tarian ranks. But for every soldier they felled, 2 more seemed to take their place. They were being pushed back slowly but inexorably, and Porter knew they couldn't keep this up forever. "We need to find that control room," he shouted over the din of battle. "Mina, any ideas?" The lieutenant consulted her wrist computer, her face bathed in its eerie glow. "I'm detecting a large power signature deeper in the base," she said. "Could be the Taraxium reactor." Porter nodded, blasting a charging Katarian off his feet with a well-placed shot. "Lead the way." They fought their way deeper into the fortress, following Mina's directions through a labyrinth of corridors and chambers. The resistance grew thicker the further they went, until it seemed like they were wading through a sea of Katarian soldiers. Finally, they emerged into a massive hangar bay, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow high above. In the center of the room sat a sleek, predatory-looking ship, its hull emblazoned with the crest of House Ilara. "That's got to be Ilara's escape craft," Boomer said, eyeing the vessel warily. "Bastard's probably planning to bug out as soon as the cannon fires." Porter's jaw tightened. "Not if we have anything to say about it. Mina, can you lock down that ship?" The lieutenant was already moving, her fingers flying over her wrist computer. "Done," she said a moment later, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "That ship's not going anywhere." A roar of anger echoed through the hangar as a group of Tarian soldiers charged towards them, weapons blazing. Porter and his team met them head-on, their pulse rifles flashing in the dimness. They fought like lions, tearing through the Katarian ranks with a ferocity born of desperation. They knew that every second counted, that Ilara could be preparing to fire the Taraxium cannon at any moment. As the last Katarian fell, Porter turned to his team, his face grim. "We need to find that control room now." They pressed on, deeper into the heart of the fortress, their weapons at the ready and their senses on high alert. They knew they were getting close, could feel it in the growing tension in the air and the increasing resistance from the Tarian defenders. But they would not be denied. They were humans, the guardians of the galaxy, and they would stop at nothing to prevent Ilara's plan from coming to fruition. No matter the cost. As the crack of pulse rifles and sizzle of plasma bolts filled the air, Porter and his team pushed deeper into the Katarian stronghold. Boomer blasted a hole through a reinforced bulkhead with a well-placed explosive charge, allowing them to storm the next chamber. Inside, they found a group of Tarian scientists huddled behind a barricade of overturned tables and equipment. The lead scientist, a tall, spindly Tarian with mottled green skin, stepped forward with his hands raised. "Please don't shoot," he said in accented galactic standard. "I am Dr. Zortak. Many of us here oppose Ilara's tyrannical rule. We want to help you reach the Taraxium cannon's control room." Porter kept his rifle trained on the scientist, his finger hovering over the trigger. He'd learned the hard way never to trust an enemy's word. "Why should we believe you?" "Because without my help, you'll never make it in time," Zortak replied, his compound eyes shimmering with intensity. "I can lead you through a secret passage that bypasses the heavily guarded areas. Please let me assist you." The scientist bobbed his head in understanding, then hurried over to a seemingly blank wall. He tapped a complex sequence into a hidden control panel, and a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow, dimly lit tunnel. Porter and his team fell into step behind the scientist, their weapons at the ready. As they navigated the twisting passages, Zortak spoke in hushed tones. "The Taraxium power core is located in a shielded chamber beneath the control room," he explained. "If you can destroy it, the entire cannon will be rendered useless." Boomer grunted. "Easier said than done, I'll bet." "Indeed," Zortak agreed. "The chamber is protected by multiple layers of force fields and guarded by Ilara's most fanatical soldiers. But there is a weakness in the shielding that... Suddenly a hail of plasma fire erupted from a side passage, forcing them to dive for cover. A squad of heavily armed Katarian soldiers poured into the tunnel, led by a massive, scarred warrior wielding a crackling energy glaive. "Commander Kravox!" Zortak hissed, his eyes wide with fear. "Ilara's second in command." Porter and his team opened fire, their pulse rifles spitting streams of deadly energy. The Katarians responded in kind, filling the air with a blistering barrage of plasma bolts. Boomer lobbed a pair of grenades into the enemy ranks, scattering the soldiers and buying them a moment's respite. Mina, meanwhile, had hacked into the tunnel's lighting system, plunging the passage into darkness and giving them a crucial advantage. Porter surged forward, his rifle blazing as he cut down Tarian after Tarian. Beside him, Boomer and Mina fought with equal ferocity, their movements a blur of precision and power. But the Tarians kept coming, wave after relentless wave, and at their head Commander Kravox bellowed orders, his energy glaive slicing through the air like a searing brand. A plasma bolt caught Boomer in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the ground. Mina was at his side in an instant, dragging him to cover behind a jutting section of wall. "I've got him," she shouted over the din of battle. "Keep going." Porter nodded, then turned to Zortak. "Lead the way," he growled. Together, they fought their way deeper into the stronghold, leaving Mina and Boomer behind. The sounds of battle faded as they raced through the twisting corridors, their breaths coming hard and fast. Finally, they emerged into a cavernous chamber, dominated by a massive, pulsing sphere of energy, the Taraxium power core. And standing before it, flanked by a squad of elite guards, was Ilara himself. The Ktarian warlord was clad in ornate battle armor, his face twisted into a cruel sneer. In his hands he held a sleek, deadly-looking energy rifle. "Welcome, Captain Porter," Ilara said, his voice dripping with malice. "You're just in time to witness the dawn of a new era, an era in which the Ktarian Empire will reign supreme, and all who oppose us will be crushed beneath our boots." Porter raised his rifle, his eyes hard as flint. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Porter's finger tightened on the trigger, but he knew he was outmatched. Ilara's guards had him surrounded, their weapons trained on his every move. It was a standoff, a tense, breathless moment stretched taut between them, and as Porter stared into the face of his enemy, he knew that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Porter lowered his rifle, staring Ilara down. "It doesn't have to be this way," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Call off the attack. There can still be peace between our people." Ilara sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "Peace? With humans? Your kind are nothing but upstarts, unfit to rule the stars. Only the Ktarian Empire deserves to reign supreme." Dr. Zortak stepped forward, his hands raised in supplication. "Please, Lord Ilara, reconsider. This path will only lead to more bloodshed, more suffering. Is that truly what you want for our people?" Ilara rounded on the scientist, his face contorted with rage. "You dare question me, traitor, I will—" Suddenly, Dr. Zortak lunged at Ilara, catching him off guard. The two Katarians grappled, their armor clanging as they struggled for control of Ilara's energy rifle. Porter seized his chance. He charged forward, slamming into Ilara with a full-body tackle that sent them both crashing to the ground. The rifle skittered away, and the two leaders began trading blows, their fists and feet a blur of motion. Ilara was strong, his Katarian physiology granting him enhanced strength and reflexes, but Porter was a master of human martial arts, his movements fluid and precise. He dodged a vicious swipe from Ilara's claws and retaliated with a spinning kick that caught the warlord in the chest, sending him stumbling back. But Ilara was far from beaten. With a roar of fury, he launched himself at Porter, his fists hammering down in a relentless barrage. Porter blocked and parried, but he could feel himself tiring, his body battered and bruised from the long fight through the stronghold. Ilara pressed his advantage, driving Porter back with a series of punishing blows. One caught Porter in the ribs, and he felt something crack, a lance of pain shooting through his side. Just as it seemed Ilara would overwhelm him, Porter's comm crackled to life. "Captain, it's Mina. I've hacked the cannon's firing mechanism. There's a vulnerability in the power core. If we can destabilize it, the whole thing will blow." Porter gritted his teeth, dodging another of Ilara's strikes. "Boomer, did you hear that? Get to the power core. Destabilize it. I'll keep Ilara busy." "On it, Cap," Boomer replied, his voice strained with pain. "Mina patched me up, but I'm not exactly at 100%. I'll do what I can." Porter redoubled his efforts, launching a flurry of strikes that forced Ilara back. The warlord was tiring too, his movements becoming sluggish and predictable. With a final desperate lunge, Porter managed to slip past Ilara's guard and deliver a crushing blow to the Tarian's skull. Ilara crumpled, his eyes rolling back in his head as he slumped to the floor. Porter stood over him, chest heaving, his fists clenched at his sides. He wanted nothing more than to end the warlord's miserable life, to ensure that he could never threaten innocent lives again. Turning away from the unconscious Katarian, Porter raced for the control room, his heart pounding in his chest. He burst through the doors, his eyes immediately drawn to the massive Taraxium power core pulsing at the center of the chamber. Boomer was there, his face pale and drawn as he worked feverishly at a control panel. "I've destabilized the core," he said, his voice tight with strain, "but we need to initiate a self-destruct sequence to make sure this thing never fires again." Porter nodded, moving to another panel and typing in the codes Dr. Zortak had given him. "Mina, start the evacuation. Get as many of the scientists and non-combatants out as you can. We'll be right behind you." "Understood, Captain," Mina replied, her voice crackling over the comm. "Self-destruct sequence initiated. You have 5 minutes to get clear." Porter and Boomer shared a grim look. They both knew the odds of making it out in time were slim, but they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy depended on them. As the countdown began, they raced from the control room, their hearts pounding in their chests. The stronghold shuddered around them, alarms blaring and lights flashing as the self-destruct sequence tore through its systems. They ran, dodging falling debris and bursts of flame, their lungs burning with exertion. The hangar was a chaotic mess of panicked Katarians and fleeing ships, but somehow they managed to fight their way through to the silent shadow. Mina was waiting for them, her face etched with worry. "Hurry!" she shouted over the din. "We've got less than a minute." Porter and Boomer scrambled aboard, and Mina gunned the engines, sending the ship rocketing out of the hangar just as a massive explosion ripped through the stronghold behind them. The shockwave caught the silent shadow, sending it tumbling end over end through the air. Porter clung to his seat, his heart in his throat as Mina fought to regain control. And then miraculously they were clear, soaring up through the atmosphere and into the star-strewn void of space. Behind them, the Katarian stronghold collapsed in on itself, a massive fireball consuming everything in its path. Porter sagged back in his seat, his body aching with exhaustion and relief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had stopped Ilara and his terrible weapon. But the cost had been high. Dr. Zortak was dead, along with countless others who had fought and died to oppose the warlord's tyranny. As the silent shadow streaked towards the nearest friendly outpost, Porter knew that their fight was far from over. There would always be those who sought to oppress and dominate, who saw violence as the only path to power. But as long as there were those willing to stand against them, to fight for what was right, there was still hope. And Porter knew that he and his team would be there, ready to answer the call whenever it came. As the silent shadow streaked through the disintegrating stronghold, Porter raced through the collapsing corridors, his heart pounding in his chest. The self-destruct sequence counted down with merciless precision, the robotic voice echoing through the halls like a death knell. He burst into the hangar, relief flooding through him as he spotted Mina and Boomer waiting by the ship's ramp. But his relief was short-lived. Commander Kravox emerged from the shadows, a snarl twisting his insectoid features. Behind him, a contingent of Katarian soldiers fanned out, their weapons trained on Porter and his team. "Did you really think it would be that easy, human?" Kravox hissed, his energy glaive crackling with deadly power. Porter raised his pulse rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. "It's over, Cravox. The cannon is destroyed. Ilara's reign of terror ends today." Cravox let out a harsh bark of laughter. "Foolish human. Lord Ilara cannot be defeated so easily." As if on cue, Ilara himself strode into the hangar, flanked by another group of soldiers. The warlord's armor was battered and scorched, but his eyes blazed with unquenchable fury. "You have meddled in my affairs for the last time, Captain Porter," Ilara growled, leveling his energy rifle at Porter's chest. "Now you and your pathetic team will die." All hell broke loose. Plasma bolts filled the air as the Tarians opened fire, forcing Porter and his team to dive for cover behind the Silent Shadow's landing gear. Porter returned fire, his pulse rifle spitting deadly energy as he cut down one soldier after another. Beside him, Mina and Boomer fought with equal ferocity, their weapons flashing in the chaos. But Boomer was still weakened from his earlier injury, his movements sluggish and labored. Porter knew they were outmatched. The Qatarians had them pinned down, and it was only a matter of time before they were overwhelmed. He had to do something, had to give his team a chance to escape. The demolitions expert nodded, his face grim. With a pained grunt, he heaved himself to his feet and lobbed a cluster of grenades towards the Qatarian lines. The explosions rocked the hangar, sending soldiers flying and filling the air with smoke and debris. "Go!" Porter yelled, pushing Mina towards the ship's ramp. "Get to the Silent Shadow." Mina hesitated, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "What about you?" "I'll hold them off," Porter replied, his voice brooking no argument. "You and Boomer get out of here, that's an order." Tears streamed down Mina's face, but she nodded, helping Boomer up the ramp and into the ship. Porter turned back to the battle, his rifle blazing as he laid down a withering barrage of covering fire. Ilara and Cravox pushed forward, their weapons spitting death. Porter dodged and weaved, his enhanced reflexes the only thing keeping him alive. But he couldn't keep this up forever. A plasma bolt seared across his ribs, and he stumbled, nearly losing his footing. Cravox closed in, his energy glaive raised for a killing blow. Porter managed to parry the strike, but the force of the impact sent shockwaves up his arm. Behind him, the Silent Shadow's engines roared to life, the ship lifting off the hangar floor. Porter risked a glance over his shoulder, relief washing through him as he saw Mina and Boomer safe in the cockpit. "We'll come back for you, Captain." Mina's voice crackled over his comm. "I promise." Porter turned back to Ilara and Cravox, a grim smile on his face. "Looks like it's just you and me now." The two Qatarians circled him, their weapons at the ready. The hangar shook and shuddered around them, the self-destruct sequence ticking down to its inevitable conclusion. The three combatants fought like demons, their bodies a blur of motion. Porter felt bones shatter beneath his fists, felt flesh tear and blood spill, but he also felt the sting of Ilara's claws, the searing pain of Cravox's energy glaive. In the end, it was a battle of attrition. Porter was only human and the Tarians were relentless. A blow from Cravox sent him crashing to the ground, his vision swimming with pain. Ilara loomed over him, a cruel smile on his face. But Porter wasn't finished yet. With a final desperate surge of strength, he lashed out with his feet, catching Ilara in the chest and sending him stumbling back. The warlord tripped over a piece of fallen debris and crashed to the ground, his leg twisting at an unnatural angle. Cravox let out a roar of rage and charged forward, his energy glaive raised high. Porter rolled to the side, barely avoiding the deadly strike. He snatched up a fallen plasma rifle and fired point-blank into Cravox's chest, the bolt searing through the Qatarian's armor and into his flesh. Cravox let out a gurgling scream and collapsed, green blood pooling beneath his twitching body. Porter struggled to his feet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He'd bought his team the time they needed to escape. Now, he just had to find a way out of this death trap himself. The hangar shook and shuddered around him, the self-destruct sequence entering its final countdown. Porter stumbled towards the far end of the hangar, hoping against hope that there might be another ship, another means of escape. But his injuries were taking their toll. His vision blurred, his legs turning to jelly beneath him. He collapsed to the ground, his pulse rifle clattering from his grasp. As the world faded to black around him, Porter's thoughts turned to his team, to the brave men and women who had fought and died beside him. He knew that Mina and Boomer would carry on the fight, that they would finish what he had started. And with that final comforting thought, Captain Robert Porter slipped into unconsciousness, the roar of the exploding stronghold echoing in his ears. As the world faded to black around him, Porter's thoughts turned to his team, to the brave men and women who had fought and died beside him. He knew that Mina and Boomer would carry on the fight, that they would finish what he had started. And with that final comforting thought, Captain Robert Porter slipped into unconsciousness, the roar of the exploding stronghold echoing in his ears. Darkness, then muffled voices, distant and urgent. Porter's eyes fluttered open, his vision blurred and unfocused. He was being dragged, his arms slung over the shoulders of two figures on either side of him. "They're almost there, just hold on," a female voice said, strained with effort. Porter blinked, his sight clearing. He was in a dimly lit tunnel, the walls shaking and crumbling around them. The two figures supporting him were Katarians, their exoskeletons covered in dust and grime. Where am I?" Porter croaked, his throat raw and parched. The female Katarian glanced at him, her compound eyes glinting in the low light. "You're lucky to be alive, human. We found you in the ruins of the hangar. I'm Arya, and this is my brother, Zek. We're part of the resistance against Ilara." Porter's mind raced, memories flooding back. The mission, the Taraxium cannon, the battle with Ilara and Kravox. "My team, did they make it out?" Arya nodded. "We saw your ship blast its way out of the hangar just before the explosion. They escaped." Relief washed over Porter, followed by a surge of guilt. He had been ready to sacrifice himself to save his team, but now he realized that his mission was far from over. "I need to get back to them," Porter said, trying to stand on his own. Pain lanced through his body and he nearly collapsed, but Arya and Zek held him upright. Porter's heart raced. A way out, a chance to regroup with his team and finish what they started. "Why are you helping me?" Arya's face hardened. "Because we need your help too. Ilara may be dead, but his loyalists still control much of our world. We can't do this alone." "Exactly," Zek said. "Help us and we'll help you. Deal?" They made their way through the winding tunnels, the sound of distant explosions and crumbling rock echoing around them. Porter's mind raced with possibilities, strategies for taking on Ilara's remaining forces and freeing the Katarian people. Finally, they emerged into a vast underground hangar, a sleek black fighter resting on the launch pad. Arya helped Porter into the cockpit, then climbed in beside him, taking the controls. "Hang on," she said, a fierce grin on her face. "This might get a little rough." The engines roared to life, and the fighter shot forward, blasting its way out of the hangar and into the smoke-filled sky. Porter gripped the weapons controls, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. Suddenly the comm crackled to life, a desperate voice filling the cockpit. "This is Kataris City. We are under attack. Ilara's forces are bombarding the city, targeting civilians. We need immediate assistance." Porter's jaw clenched. Even in death, Ilara's cruelty lived on, his loyalists lashing out in retribution. He turned to Arya, a question in his eyes. She nodded, her face grim. "We have to help them. It's what my father would have wanted." "Your father?" Porter asked, realization dawning. "Dr. Zortak?" Arya's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "He sacrificed himself to give us a chance, to give our people hope. We can't let that be in vain." Porter's resolve hardened. He had made a promise, a vow to protect the innocent and stand against tyranny, and he would see it through, no matter the cost. He reached for the comm, keying in a familiar frequency. "Mina, Boomer, do you read me?" A burst of static, then Mina's voice, thick with emotion. "Captain, is that you? We thought you were dead." "Not yet," Porter said, a wry smile on his face. "Listen, I need you to get a message to the Council. Tell them what's happening here, and that we need reinforcements. The Qatarian resistance needs our help. Understood, Captain. Boomer's gruff voice chimed in. We'll bring the cavalry. Just stay alive until we get there. Porter chuckled, then winced as pain shot through his ribs. No promises, but I'll do my best. He cut the comm and turned back to Arya, who was guiding the fighter towards the besieged city. Determination etched on her face. Arya's mandibles twitched in a fierce grin. Born ready, human. Let's show these bastards what happens when they mess with the wrong planet. Together, they rocketed towards the city, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle for Qataris had only just begun, but with the resistance at his side and his team on the way, Porter knew that victory was within reach. All they had to do was fight for it, one city at a time until the Qatarian people were finally free. As Porter and Arya raced towards the besieged city in their stolen Qatarian fighter, the devastation below came into sharp focus. Plumes of black smoke rose from shattered buildings, while the distant sound of weapons fire echoed through the streets. Porter's jaw tightened as he witnessed the carnage Ilara's loyalists had unleashed upon the innocent civilians. Arya guided the fighter towards a heavily damaged sector of the city, where a small group of resistance fighters had established a makeshift base. As they touched down, a battle-scarred Qatarian with a missing mandible approached, his rifle held at the ready. "I am Raxtor," he said, his voice a guttural rasp. "Leader of what remains of the city's defenses, you must be the human Arya spoke of." Porter nodded, wincing as he climbed out of the cockpit, his injuries from the earlier battle still raw. "Captain Robert Porter, United Galactic Marines. We're here to help." Raxtor eyed him appraisingly, then turned to Arya. "Your father was a brave Qatarian. He would be proud of what you've done today." Arya's mandibles twitched in a sad smile. "We have to finish what he started. What's the situation here?" Raxtor led them into the base, where a holographic map of the city flickered to life. "Ilara's loyalists have taken control of the central district," he explained, pointing to a cluster of red markers. "They're using the government buildings as a command center and have fortified the surrounding area. Our forces are outnumbered and outgunned." Porter studied the map, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to neutralize their leadership," he said finally. "Cut off the head, and the rest will fall." Raxtor nodded grimly. "Agreed, but it won't be easy. The Loyalists have the city locked down tight." Porter turned to Arya. "That stealth fighter of yours could be the key. If you can provide air support, target their heavy weapons and communications, it'll give us a fighting chance on the ground." Arya's eyes gleamed with determination. "Consider it done." Together they devised a plan of attack. Porter would lead a strike team of resistance fighters in a daring ground assault, using his advanced human combat training to outmaneuver and outgun the enemy. Arya would provide air support, using the stealth fighters' advanced weaponry to sow chaos and confusion among the loyalist ranks. As the resistance fighters geared up for battle, Porter pulled Raxtor aside. "I need your best men for this," he said quietly. "It's going to be a tough fight." Raxtor clapped a clawed hand on Porter's shoulder. "You'll have them. We've been waiting for a chance like this." With a final nod, Porter joined his strike team at the edge of the base. He checked his weapons one last time, the weight of the pulse rifle familiar and reassuring in his hands. "Remember," he said to the assembled Qatarians, "we're not just fighting for this city. We're fighting for the future of your entire planet. Let's show these bastards what happens when they mess with the wrong species." The Qatarians roared their approval, their mandibles clicking with anticipation. Porter grinned fiercely, adrenaline surging through his veins. "Let's move out." They hit the Loyalist positions hard and fast, Porter leading the charge with a primal battle cry. His pulse rifle bucked in his hands as he fired, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. Around him, the resistance fighters surged forward, their own weapons blazing. Overhead, Arya's stealth fighter screamed through the sky, its advanced weaponry raining destruction upon the Loyalist fortifications. Explosions blossomed like fiery flowers, sending shattered masonry and twisted metal flying in all directions. Porter ducked and weaved through the chaos, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to stay one step ahead of the enemy fire. He vaulted over a barricade, his rifle spitting death, and came face to face with a loyalist soldier. The Tarian snarled, his claws slashing towards Porter's throat. But the human was faster. He sidestepped the blow and rammed the butt of his rifle into the soldier's face, feeling the satisfying crunch of exoskeleton giving way. As the battle raged on, Porter's comm crackled to life. "Captain!" Raxtor's voice was strained, almost panicked. "We just received word. Ilara is alive. He's on his way here with reinforcements." Porter's blood ran cold. If Ilara reached the city, all their efforts would be for nothing. They had to end this now. "Change of plans," he barked into the comm. "We're going for the command center. Raxtor, Arya, meet me at these coordinates. We're going to cut the head off this snake once and for all." Acknowledgements crackled back, and Porter redoubled his efforts, carving a path of destruction through the loyalist ranks. Every fiber of his being was focused on one goal, reaching that command center before Ilara arrived. Finally, he spotted Raxtor and Arya up ahead, pinned down by heavy fire from a fortified position. Porter sprinted towards them, diving into cover beside Raxtor. "Glad you could make it," the Qatarian growled, popping up to snap off a few shots. Porter grinned wolfishly. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. What's the situation?" Arya pointed towards a heavily guarded structure at the end of the street. "That's the command center. Zorvax, Ilara's top commander in the city, is holed up inside with his leadership." Porter's eyes narrowed. "Then that's where we're going. Arya, we need a diversion, something big and loud to draw their fire." Arya's mandibles twitched in a fierce smile. "I have just the thing." She tapped a command into her wrist computer, and moments later, a series of massive explosions rocked the loyalist positions. The stealth fighter soared overhead, its weapons blazing, as Arya remotely guided it into the heart of the enemy formation. They charged forward, weapons firing, as the loyalists scrambled to respond to the new threat. Porter led the way, his rifle barking in short, controlled bursts. Beside him, Raxtor and Arya fought with equal ferocity, their movements fluid and deadly. They reached the command center, blasting through the heavily reinforced doors with shaped charges. Inside, they found Zorvax and his leadership huddled around a tactical display. The loyalist commander spun to face them, his eyes widening in shock and rage. "You," he snarled, recognizing Porter, "you'll pay for this, human." Porter stepped forward, his rifle leveled at Zorvax's chest. "It's over, Zorvax. Surrender now, and I'll spare your life." Zorvax let out a harsh bark of laughter. "Spare my life? I'd rather die than surrender to a filthy human." He lunged forward, a wicked-looking energy blade flashing to life in his hand. Porter reacted instinctively, dodging the blow and bringing his rifle up to block the follow-up strike. The two warriors clashed in a deadly dance. Porter's human strength and speed matched against Zorvax's Qatarian ferocity. They traded blows back and forth, the air crackling with the energy of their weapons. Porter could feel himself tiring, his earlier injuries taking their toll. He knew he had to end this quickly. With a final desperate surge of strength, he feinted left, then lunged right, his rifle slamming into Zorvax's chest with a sickening crunch. The Qatarian staggered back, his energy blade falling from suddenly nerveless fingers. Porter pressed his advantage, his rifle flashing up to aim point-blank at Zorvax's head. "Yield," he growled, his finger tightening on the trigger, "or die." Zorvax glared at him with pure hatred, his mandibles twitching with rage. But as he looked around the command center, saw his fellow leaders on their knees with Raxtor and Arya's weapons trained on them, he knew he had no choice. Slowly, painfully, he raised his clawed hands in surrender. Porter let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. It was over. They had won. But even as he lowered his rifle, he knew that the battle for Qataris was far from finished. Ilara was still out there, still a threat, and Porter would not rest until the Qatarian people were truly free. He turned to Raxtor and Arya, a grim smile on his face. "Good work," he said. "But we're not done yet. Ilara's still coming. and we need to be ready." Together they walked out of the command center, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle for Kataris had only just begun, but with the strength of the resistance and the indomitable will of the human spirit, Porter knew that victory was within their grasp. They just had to reach out and take it. As Porter stood over Zorvax's defeated form, the Loyalist commander let out a gurgling laugh, blood bubbling from his lips. "You think you've won, human?" Zorvax rasped, his eyes glinting with malice. "Ilara has planted Taraxium bombs throughout the city. Even if you defeat us, your victory will be short-lived." Porter's blood ran cold at the revelation. He grabbed Zorvax by the collar, hauling him up to eye level. "Where are the bombs? Tell me." Zorvax just grinned, his mandibles twitching with cruel amusement. "You'll never find them in time. The city will burn, and Ilara will rise from the ashes to rule over all." With a snarl of frustration, Porter slammed Zorvax back to the ground, rendering him unconscious. He turned to Arya, his face grim. "We need to find those bombs now." Arya nodded, her eyes hardening with determination. "The stealth fighter's scanners might be able to detect the Taraxium signature, but we'll need time to complete a full sweep of the city." Porter keyed his comm, contacting Raxtor. "Change of plans. Ilara's planted bombs throughout the city. We need you to hold off his reinforcements while we locate and disarm the devices." Raxtor's reply was immediate. "Understood. We'll buy you as much time as we can. Good luck, Captain." Porter and Arya raced back to the stealth fighter, their hearts pounding with urgency. As Arya initiated the scan, Porter manned the weapons, ready to defend against any Loyalist attacks. The scan progressed agonizingly slowly, each passing second feeling like an eternity. Porter's eyes flicked between the readouts and the city below, watching for any sign of trouble. Suddenly the scanner pinged, indicating a Taraxium signature. "Got one," Arya called out, banking the fighter towards the location. "Looks like it's in an abandoned factory complex." Porter gritted his teeth as they approached the factory, spotting Loyalist soldiers patrolling the perimeter. "They're not making this easy for us." Arya set the fighter down on a nearby rooftop, and together they infiltrated the complex, engaging in a series of tense firefights with the Loyalist guards. They finally reached the bomb, a sinister-looking device pulsing with Taraxium energy. Porter's training kicked in as he carefully disarmed the bomb, his hands steady despite the pressure. With a final snip of a wire, the device powered down, and he let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. But there was no time to rest. The scanner had located several more bombs scattered throughout the city. Porter and Arya raced from one location to the next, facing deadly traps and fierce resistance from the Loyalists at every turn. They managed to disarm bomb after bomb, each success bringing them one step closer to saving the city. But as they neared the final location, the scanner revealed a chilling truth. "The last bomb is in the central power plant," Arya said, her voice tight with tension, "and it's got a much higher Taraxium yield than the others." Porter's mind raced, putting together the pieces of Ilara's plan. He's going to destroy the power plant. The chain reaction will level the entire city. Arya met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the same grim realization. We have to stop him. As they approached the power plant, they could see Ilara's forces converging on the location, ready to defend their master's final gambit. Porter knew that time was running out. He turned to Arya, his jaw set with determination. "Get me as close as you can. I'm going in alone." Arya opened her mouth to protest, but Porter cut her off. "You need to get back to Raxtor and the others. Help them hold the line. I'll deal with Ilara." Arya hesitated for a moment, then nodded, clasping Porter's arm in a warrior's grip. "Give him hell, Captain." As Arya pulled away, Porter leapt from the stealth fighter, using his jetpack to control his descent. He hit the ground running, blasting his way through the Loyalist lines with a primal battle cry. He could feel the heat of the power plant's reactors as he fought his way inside, the air shimmering with barely contained energy. And there, standing before the final bomb, was Ilara himself. The Ktarian warlord turned to face Porter, his eyes blazing with madness and hate. "You're too late, human," he snarled, his claws flexing with anticipation. "The bomb is armed, and the city will fall. All that remains is to deal with you." Porter raised his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Not if I have anything to say about it." The two warriors charged at each other, their weapons forgotten as they clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand battle. They traded blows with inhuman speed and ferocity, the fate of an entire world hanging in the balance. But even as he fought, Porter's mind was racing, searching for a way to disarm the final bomb. He knew that every second counted, that the lives of countless innocents depended on him. With a final desperate effort, he managed to throw Elara off balance, sending the warlord crashing to the ground. Porter leapt towards the bomb, his hands flying over the controls as he sought to deactivate the device. Elara roared with fury, launching himself at Porter in a last-ditch attempt to stop him. But Porter was ready, meeting the warlord's charge with a devastating uppercut that snapped Elara's head back and sent him tumbling away. In the end, it came down to a single moment, a single choice. Porter's hand hovered over the final switch, the seconds ticking down towards detonation. He could almost feel the weight of the city's fate pressing down on him, the lives of every Ktarian and every human counting on his next action. With a deep breath, Porter made his choice. He charged at the final bomb, his hands flying over the controls as he tried to disarm the device. But it was too complex, the Taraxium energy pulsing through it in an intricate web of circuits and failsafes. Behind him, Elara let out a cruel laugh, his eyes glinting with malevolent triumph. "You're too late, human," he snarled, rising to his feet. "The bomb is armed, and this city will burn. All your efforts have been for nothing." Porter turned to face the warlord, his jaw set with determination. "No, I won't let you win, not like this." They clashed once more, their bodies battered and bleeding, but fueled by an indomitable will. Porter struck with the speed and precision of a human warrior, his blows raining down upon Elara's exoskeleton. The Ktarian fought back with savage ferocity, his claws raking across Porter's armor, seeking to pierce flesh and bone. They danced a deadly waltz amidst the thrumming machinery of the power plant, the seconds ticking down towards oblivion. "Why?" Porter demanded, his voice raw with emotion. "Why do all this? Why unleash such destruction upon your own people?" Elara sneered, his mandibles clicking with disdain. "The Ktarians have grown weak under the rule of your precious Galactic Council. We were once a proud race of warriors, conquerors who brought the galaxy to its knees. But now, we are nothing more than lapdogs, content to live in the shadow of lesser species." He surged forward, his energy blade crackling with power as he sought to impale Porter. But the human was too quick, dodging the blow and retaliating with a vicious uppercut that snapped Elara's head back. "You're wrong," Porter said, his voice ringing with conviction. "True strength comes from cooperation, from unity, not from oppression and violence. Your way will only lead to more suffering, more death." Elara laughed, a harsh grating sound that echoed through the chamber. "And what has your way brought us? Nothing but weakness and stagnation. Only through conflict can the Ktarians reclaim our former glory. Only through the crucible of war can we be reborn." He charged again, his movements a blur of speed and savagery. Porter met him head-on, his own weapons forgotten as he engaged in a brutal hand-to-hand battle. They traded blows with bone-crushing force, their armor denting and cracking under the onslaught. But Porter could feel his strength waning, his injuries taking their toll. He knew he couldn't keep this up forever, and with each passing second, the bomb ticked closer to detonation. In a final desperate gambit, Porter lunged forward, tackling Elara to the ground. They grappled and rolled, their limbs entangled in a deadly embrace. Porter managed to wrap his arms around the warlord's neck, squeezing with all his might. Elara thrashed and bucked, his claws scrabbling at Porter's face and throat. But the human held on, pouring every ounce of his strength into the chokehold. He could feel Elara's struggles growing weaker, the life draining from his body. The bomb pulsed with malevolent energy, its countdown nearing 0. Porter knew he had only seconds left. He could try to run, to save himself. But he knew that the explosion would still devastate the city, killing countless innocents. No, there was only one choice, one final sacrifice. Porter threw himself onto the bomb, wrapping his body around it in a desperate attempt to shield the device. He could feel the heat of the teraxium, the searing pain as it burned through his armor and into his flesh. But he held on, gritting his teeth against the agony. He thought of Aria and Raxtor, of Mina and Boomer, of all the brave souls who had fought and died to bring an end to Ilara's tyranny. He thought of the Katarian people, free at last from the yoke of oppression, free to build a better future, a brighter tomorrow. And with that final comforting thought, Captain Robert Porter closed his eyes and embraced the light. The explosion was devastating, a blinding flash of energy that consumed the power plant and everything around it. The ground shook and buckled, buildings crumbling like sand castles before the tide. But the chain reaction that would have destroyed the entire city never came. Porter's sacrifice had contained the worst of the blast, had given the Tarians a chance to live and rebuild. In the aftermath, Aria and Raxtor picked their way through the rubble, their hearts heavy with grief and loss. They found Porter's body amidst the debris, his armor fused and melted by the incredible heat. But even in death his face was peaceful, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He had given his life so that others might live, so that the galaxy might know peace. The Katarian Resistance and the Galactic Council honored Porter as a hero, erecting monuments to his bravery and selflessness. They recognized that his actions had saved countless lives and brought an end to Ilara's reign of terror. But for those who had known him, who had fought beside him, the loss cut deep. Aria and Raxtor mourned the man who had become their friend, their ally in the darkest of times. And yet, even as they grieved, they knew that Porter's spirit would live on, that his sacrifice had lit a flame of hope and unity that would never be extinguished. As the Katarian homeworld began to heal, as its people started to rebuild their shattered lives, Aria and Raxtor made a solemn vow. They would carry on Porter's legacy, would work tirelessly to forge a future of peace and understanding between all species. The road ahead would be long and difficult, fraught with challenges and setbacks, but they would not falter, would not lose sight of the dream that Porter had fought and died for. For in the end, it was not the strength of arms or the power of technology that had saved them. It was the strength of the human spirit, the indomitable will to stand against tyranny and oppression, no matter the cost. And as long as that spirit endured, as long as there were those willing to fight for what was right, there would always be hope. Hope for a better tomorrow, a brighter future. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.